Welcome to Ask Dr. Jake. My name is Dr. Jake Tucker, and I'm coming to you live from Good Life Family Chiropractic here on the south side of Lincoln. I am the owner and founder, and today, as always, we're going to be bringing you more hope about God's message of health, hope, and wholeness. And so, what I wanted to talk to you about today, give you a couple of patient examples of what we're going through here in the office, but more importantly, is just break down this dichotomy that's really gotten us broken as far as a healthcare system. So before I get into that, let me tell you where you can find me. Obviously, here in Lincoln, you can find my office at 7011 Kentwell Lane, Suite 200. That's at the corner of 56th and Pine Lake here on the south side, right next to Campbell's Nursery. We're the next building east of Campbell's on Pine Lake. And you can also find me on the web, our website, goodlifefamilychiropractic.com. You can also find the radio show, the show page, on Facebook, facebook.com/AskDrJake, as well as the clinic page, facebook.com/MaxLifeLincoln. So, all of that, absolutely. Find us anywhere. We're all over social media. We're all over the internet. I'm even streaming this video here this morning as we're recording. And it's because I really want you to be able to consume this however you best consume material, because, right now, healthcare costs are one of the most devastating really epidemics of our country. You look at the cost of bankruptcy and what that actually does to someone's health, and it's more dangerous than any epidemic or pandemic than we've ever had, just on its toll on a person's health, its mental health, emotional health, well-being. And really, all this goes to just show us that as a society, as a culture, as a whole, we've gone away from God's will, God's laws, God's plan, and we've entered into becoming, even as the church, part of this culture, this mindset, this culture of sickness and disease cover up and disease management, when Jesus invites us to have life and have it to the full, all by just following him, following in his precepts, following in his laws, following in his principles. And it really starts when you're looking at the statistics with understanding just how bad we have it in the current mindset of where we're at. You see, as the world's leading spender on healthcare costs, we spend, as on average, $11,000 per person every single year on healthcare costs. It's the number one form of bankruptcy in the United States is due to healthcare costs, and health insurance isn't preventing it, because 85% of the people that declared bankruptcy due to healthcare costs had health insurance. And so you'd think, though, that with all this money that we're spending on healthcare, that we would actually have a pretty good healthcare system. Yeah, it's number one spending in the world, and it's almost 1/5 of our gross domestic product. But out of 37 industrialized nations, we're ranked dead last as far as our healthcare outcomes. And the healthcare itself, you look at something like maternal mortality rates, infant mortality rates, are declining, life expectancy, and we're ranking dead last amongst these industrialized nations. So we have to start thinking about this differently. And where it has to start thinking about it differently is just in this process. How do you get to the doctor? How do you get to a healthcare professional? And what's their mindset when it comes to your health? Well, we wait until you feel a symptom. And then once you get a symptom, say that's pain, say that's an arrhythmia in your heart, say that's numbness and tingling, shooting pains down your leg, and any of these things are a common entryway into our current healthcare system. You go in, and the doctor, he looks at you, gets your history, and he gives you a diagnosis. With that diagnosis comes a pre-prescribed list of medication, all of which is designed to cover up the symptoms that you came out in with. If you go home and you take that medication, the hope is that that symptom will go away and you will heal, because our bodies are designed to heal. Even medical doctors recognize that. The medication doesn't do the healing. Your own body, the innate intelligence that God placed there, is what does the healing. Well, if it doesn't work, if covering up the symptom doesn't work, then you go back to the doctor. He runs another test, maybe gives you a different diagnosis, definitely gives you a different or stronger drug. And if that doesn't work, eventually you're going to find yourself in a specialist office. That special doctor, he's going to run a special test. He's going to give you a special drug. He's going to give you a special price on it, of course. And then if that doesn't work, you're going to find yourself in a surgeon's office, because that surgeon is going to determine whether or not you are better off without the organ, cells, and tissues that God placed there. That's our healthcare system in a nutshell. That is the system that's failing you. And it's the mindset of waiting until there's a symptom to do anything about it that gets you stuck there. You look at the top causes of death in the United States, the CDC ranks number one and number two cardiovascular disease and cancer, with cancer being expected to surpass cardiovascular disease this year. Between those two diseases, we're expecting that will cover almost 2/3 of all deaths that happen in the United States. If you wait until you feel a symptom of either of those diseases, you're waiting 20 years on average of having that disease before it's even detectable. But if you're going to get a symptom, the most common symptom of cardiovascular disease, 63% of the time, is the heart attack itself. If you wait until you feel the heart attack, your first heart attack, just that, we have the best survival rates in the world, but it's only 50% survival rate. If you wait till you feel it, you are absolutely setting yourself up for failure. Cancer is the same thing. If you wait till you feel it 20 years, at 10 years, cancer is considered lethal. And so we go in and we get these tests preventatively, right? We get our colonoscopies, we get our mammograms, we get our CT scans, we get our MRIs, we get our prostates checked. But even by our best test, it still takes cancer growing inside your body for 8 years before it's detectable. This is why we're losing the war on cancer. And yes, it seems like cancer survival rates are getting better, but guess what? If you survive cancer 5 years and 1 day and die of cancer, you beat cancer. You survived cancer. That's the definition right now. And that's why we're expected to lose more lives due to cancer this year than we did last year when it was number 2 on the list. And so we have to stop defining our health as how we feel if we want to differentiate ourselves from the way that the world is doing it. And so if you're ready to start taking this step in differentiating yourself, just give us a call. Our phone number here, 531-289-7100. You can call or text us at 531-289-7100. And today, if you want to start differentiating yourself from the world, I would suggest setting up a consultation with me so that we can go over your health history and all the factors that determine how healthy you are with a test, with an exam. We don't guess, we test here in this office. So call us up right now. The first 5 callers are going to get a 50% discount off of the exam, off of any necessary x-rays. So call now, text 531-289-7100. But if we're going to redefine health, if we're going to do things differently, right, because we don't want the same results, we're going to have to define health accurately. And the World Health Organization actually gets this right. Dorland's Medical Dictionary actually gets this right. Health is a state of 100% optimal function and the ability of your body to heal. And this is across all socioeconomic factors, how, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Add these things together, and now you have your health. The problem comes when we define our health by how we feel, which isn't accounted for anywhere in the definition. You're waiting until you've lost at least 40% function until you feel a symptom. Now, this can happen quickly, right? You get in a car accident, you slip and fall, you tear through some tissues, you damage those, you take their function down, you're going to feel it instantaneously. But what about cardiovascular disease? Well, it starts with our lifestyle. It starts with the choices that we make on a daily basis that go against God's laws and principles of health and healing. If we don't move our bodies, we don't get enough oxygen into our cells, we don't eat good, healthy, whole foods that God designed, we ignore our central nervous system, and we do all these things, surrounding ourselves in toxins, thinking the way that the world does, having so much stress, not getting enough water in our bodies, and gradually over time, our function decreases until we hit the point where finally we get our first symptom. And maybe for cardiovascular disease, you go into your doctor for your annual physical, and he says, oh, you've got high blood pressure. Here is a medication. Take this. It will help to lower your blood pressure. Does it address the cause of what created the high blood pressure in the first place? Is it addressing the cause of what's creating the heart disease and the cardiovascular disease underneath? By no means. By no means. We have to look at what created that in the first place, work it backwards, and as we do so, we get to start to establish real health and function in the body. And what controls that? What controls your function? And that's your central nervous system. You think about it. When God designed you, the first thing he formed in your mother's womb, after that those cells began to duplicate and replicate and differentiate itself 35 trillion times to create this loving, living, thinking clay that's sitting across the radio from each other right now and listening and talking about health, the first thing that was designed and created was your central nervous system. Your brain specifically. Off of the brain grew a little tail called the brainstem and spinal cord. Off of the spinal cord grew these branches called nerve roots. And these nerve roots go out to every organ, cell, and tissue in your body and are in control of how well they function. Think about it. For your heart to beat, for your lungs to breathe, for a cut on your leg to heal, a signal has to go from your brain, run down your spinal cord, and out the nerves to every organ, cell, and tissue in your body. It doesn't happen any other way. If we cut the brainstem, all function dies. If we cut the nerves going to the heart, completely separating that from that intelligence that God placed up there, the heart stops and you die. But that's incredibly rare because God designed and surrounded and protected the nervous system with bone. Bone completely surrounds that system. And it's very, very difficult to damage nerves, to damage the spinal cord, to damage the brainstem without actually damaging the vertebra that surround and protect it first. You have a spinal column, and each individual vertebra is designed to surround and protect your brainstem, your spinal cord, and the nerve roots as they exit off. And that has a normal position. It should be straight up and down from the front with 3 45-degree curves from the side. When it has that position, there can be no pressure or damage on your nervous system. But when it gets knocked out of alignment, even the slightest amount, 2 millimeters or 2 degrees is enough to disrupt the communication between your brain and the organ, cells, and tissues on the other end by as much as 60% if left there for just 5 minutes. And if left there for even a day, there are degenerative changes that happen in that joint. That's where arthritis comes from: inflammation, misalignment, and time. You weren't born with arthritis. You weren't predestined for arthritis. There are laws and principles that God set up that we violated, knowingly or unknowingly, that led to the arthritis forming in our bodies. And so when we go back to feeling, however, and this is where this chart on the side here, if you're watching on Facebook, that's where this diagram of a nerve root comes into play. If we base even feeling that dysfunction on how we feel and on if we're healthy or not, and if we're getting function through our bodies, you're going to miss this 80% of the time. Because even pinching a nerve, you only feel it about 20% of the time because only 10% of that nerve root controls sensation. You can go 80% of the way through that nerve root, and if you don't hit the right part, you won't feel it. But your motor function will suffer, and your visceral or your organ function will suffer, depending on which part you're hitting. But if you just brush up against that bottom section, that 10%, then that starts to create dysfunction in your body. That you start to feel that, and that starts to become excruciating. And that's where chiropractors come in. We're designed to actually detect nervous system interference. And we do that specifically. And if you're interested in one of those tests this morning, give us a call. Pick up the phone, 531-289-7100. Text us, call us. We'll be standing by to take your phone call. You'll get a 50% discount off of exam, x-rays, any necessary imaging, all for just $65. I'm Dr. Jake. Tune in tomorrow for another episode of Ask Dr.